Okay. So we're gonna look. Are there any questions on Monday?
No. Yes.
Anyone? What's that say?
Never mind.
Yes, I have a question.
My question was fixed.
What was your question?
How did it was the percent.
The percent?
Yeah, but I figured it. I think.
I didn't figure that one out.
Cole, what's your question?
On the percent.
The percent. So, like I said, we've done a lot of these now. It's just the percent is probably the newest one out of all of them. So, what is the sentence that we always remember? Caitlin? Part is percent of whole. I want you to see it. So, do we have a percent?
Yeah, our percent is 24.
Nope.
Or 96.
Nope. Jacob? We don't have a percent. If we had a percent, you would see the percent sign. But there isn't a percent, which means these two numbers are either going to be our part or our whole. So which one is our part? Is our part 24 or is our part 96?
24.
Jacob? 24. And then we have of 96. It's a pretty... Stop. It's a pretty common thing that when you have of whatever number, what the number that comes after the of is going to be your whole. So 24 is percent of 96. What does of mean? Raise your hand. What does of mean, Taylor? Of means to multiply. Can I multiply a percent sign times 96? Nope. So if I can't multiply, what am I going to do? I'm going to divide. So when I divide, remember you can use your calculator on this. What do I start with? Do I start with the part or the whole, Casey? You start with the part, so 24 divided by 96. Now, I'm going to use my calculator because it's just a little bit easier. So when you do 24 divided by 96, you get 0.25 as your answer. What is 0.25 as a percent, though, Casey? 25%. Because when you get a decimal answer, then you just move it 2 places over, and it gives you the percent. Yes, Jacob?
What I did was I saw that I had 24.96. So I know that to get to 96, you multiply 24 by 4, and it's 96.
Yeah.
I pretended that the 96 was the like 100, and I saw that 25 wasn't 100, was hundreds. So that's how I got 20%.
Yeah, so 20 that may have been a little bit more difficult since you didn't start with the 25%. But if you were trying to figure out what is 25% of 96, you're right. You would have just divided it by 4 and ended up with 24. Because 25% goes into 100 4 times, just like quarters. Yes, Cadence?
Did you say the ticket?
I did. Thank you. Any other questions about this stuff?
Still doing it Monday. I haven't done it.
Well, you're supposed to finish Monday on Monday night. Sandra, what's up?
I'll do Tuesday.
I don't see one. Zane doesn't.
Oh, okay.
There's a laptop laying on top of that desk. Is that yours?
Oh, that's mine.
Oh, sorry. So, if there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and start on the book. Today, any other questions? Okay, so put up the bell work. Today you are on page 130. Cadence, that's your strike. That's your strike too.
I already have 7. Well, I have 7.
That's great. I can add to it. Gives us something to talk about when we have our conference.
Huh? I have 7 strikes.
Okay, so yesterday we started talking about a coordinate plane and all the different things about it, and we came up with the coordinates that points that were already on there. Today we're going to take the coordinates and we're going to actually put them on the graph and make sure that we can graph the places. So our problem today says Alan is a college student. She started her day in her room and then she attended classes in the science, education, and art buildings. She ate lunch at the dining hall before meeting a friend in the music building. The coordinate plane represents a map of Alan's college campus. Graph each building as a point on a coordinate plane labeled with the first letter of the building. So, there isn't a coordinate plane. If I was you all, well, it has it done for you, but I want you to actually do that. So what I'm going to do, look back here. I'm going to give you a piece of graph paper. So what's your largest point? Or what's the largest coordinate? Gabriel? Huh?
It's 6.
6. So positive 6 and negative 6. So you don't need a huge graph that's going to go all the way down and all the way across. You just need one that stretches to positive 6 and negative 6. So I'm going to give you all a half sheet of graph paper.
What's that?
Graph paper.
Like coordinates. It has grid, but it's a big It's a graph grid. It's like look at the graph under. Yeah, like squares. Yeah. No circles. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So on your test, you're already going to have a graph. You're not going to have to draw one. But since this one doesn't give you a graph to use, we're going to do this. So if you've never drawn on graph paper before, all you have to do is use the lines that are already there. So you're going to start in the middle and draw an arrow straight down, another arrow, and then go across the middle, and then you have your graph.
Yeah.
Each line, for this case, I would have each line be 1. So like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, like so on. So let me pass out this. But while I'm passing this out, what's my problem about? The problem I just read about Alan and the college student. What's it about?
Her day at college.
It's about her day at college. So Alan is a college student. She started her day in her room. Then she attended classes in the science, education, and art buildings. She ate lunch at the dining hall before meeting a friend at the music building, and the coordinate plane represents a map of her college campus, graph each building as a point on the coordinate plane labeled with the first letter. What are we trying to find out? Jacob?
You have to graph each building as a point on a coordinate plane.
Well, yeah, it's telling me to graph it and what not. So, Alan is a college student. She started her day in her room, and then she attended classes in science, education, and art buildings. She ate lunch in the dining hall before meeting a friend at the music building. The coordinate plane represents a map of Allen's campus, Daffy's building as a point. On the coordinate plane labeled with the first letter of the building. What information is important? Emma, I'm not sure why your book isn't even open. What information is important, Carlia?
The numbers.
Oh, the points, yeah, the coordinates.
The coordinates.
Anything else that's important? Jacob?
The chart.
Well, yeah, the chart has numbers on it. So use the paper that I just gave you and draw your graph.
I don't understand how we're supposed to graph.
Huh?
I don't understand what we're doing.
You're taking the points right here and you're putting them on a graph.
Oh,
But you have to draw the graph.
I think I know what you meant by graph.
Yeah, if you graph is a verb, so it's something that you do, or it can be a verb.
I thought graph was like you can measure what you measure how much it's good.
Ask someone. Or actually, there's one over there. Just make sure you put it back at the end of class so I don't run out. A graph, like typically a graph is a thing, it's a noun. But it can if it's telling you to graph some points, that's a verb. It means to put the points on the graph. Yes.
Doesn't matter that I put the numbers
As long it's your graph. So no, as long as it's your graph and you understand it, it doesn't really matter where your points go. It does matter that this is 1, 2, 3, so on, but it doesn't matter if it's above or below it or however. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to do this. It takes some time when you're drawing your own graph. Remember to label it with. You got your graph. Now use the points.
Do I know just like 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you start at the center, which is 0, and then go 1, 2, 3 that way. But make sure, because here,
Yep, that's perfect.
and that's crooked too. So make sure it's on the line. Huh? Well, that's fine, as long as you don't have to make it go all the way across. You just have to make sure it's big enough to get to 6 each one. So mine, I just made it go all the way across, because why not? But you don't have to. No, Jordan, you need to go on. That tells me nothing. I have no idea what that is. Make sure you use the lines to help you. Because this needs to go all the way in the straight line. Or else your points are going to be in the place. Make sure you label your X and your Y axis. And make sure you put the letter that goes with each one. So science, put an S with it. Education, put an E with it, and so on. So this isn't, I'll tell you all, when I was in college, this is something that you think about. you think about like where your classes are, because in college you kind of get to pick when you take your classes and what time. And I know where I went to college, it's a really big hill. And so you have like the gym and everything at the bottom, and you have the English department at the very top of the hill. So you really had to think about where you like what order your classes were in, so you weren't having to go up and down the hill all day.
Yep.
So
My mom and dad both tried to learn.
yeah, and so it can, and because I remember I messed up in my senior year. I had to take these certain classes and I had to do them because they were only offered at certain times. So I had 15 minutes to go from the very bottom of the hill where the gym was all the way up to the top at where the English department was. And I had 15 minutes to do it. And I could do it if I didn't talk to anyone, if I didn't stop, I kept my momentum up, I could do it in 7 minutes and not be out of breath. But if I talked to anyone or if I slowed down at all or stopped, then I would lose my momentum and I would get out of breath. But this is kind of something that kids look at when they're signing up for their classes to figure out, okay, can I get from point A to point B and so on. But I will say I never actually made a graph. I just did it in my head. Go ahead and talk to your people about how you did it. If you had trouble setting it up, let them know. Let them help you.
I'm still making my I made a graph. I have no option.
I just love to say. I love to say. I was wondering if
Hey, class. So I've kind of gone ahead and drawn my graph just to save time. But can anyone like explain to me how you draw a graph and like what happens, Jacob?
So first, what you do is, I personally would draw the y-axis first. So you go from the top to the bottom, all the way down the paper. And then next you do the x-axis. You go from the right of the paper to the left. Okay?
Okay, let me stop you right there. So you're correct. You draw it doesn't really matter which one you draw first. I think I tend to do the x-axis first just because I'm more used to horizontal, but it really doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter, especially if you have graph paper, if you don't have graph paper, I'm not going to expect it to be straight. But if you do have graph paper, use those lines to help you, because otherwise, if you draw a line like this and you draw a line straight down, well, if I go 1, 2, 3, that's way over here. And if I go 1, 2, 3, that's way down here. So 2 points that should be in line aren't in line. So just try and make your axes as long or as straight as you can. Sometimes you'll have graph paper, sometimes you won't. Even notebook paper, though, you have those lines that go straight across. And so a lot of times I'll use those lines as my axes to go straight across, so it's still straight. But anyway, continue.
And what I would do is, next to the y-axis on the top, I'll write y. And then, like at the bottom too. And then to the right of the paper, for x, I write x. And then the other side, yeah. And then in the middle, I put a little dot to mark the origin.
Yes, the origin is all, and you can even just put a 0 there to mark the origin if you want. So hold on. So these tick marks, when you have graph paper, it makes it really easy to decide where your tick marks are, because you can use the lines on your graph paper and say, well, this is 1, 2, 3, and you can count your lines. On regular notebook paper, you kind of have to estimate the ones for the x-axis, but the y-axis, you already have those lines. So I always hear the phrase to work smarter, not harder. And so what that essentially means is use what you can. Don't do things more difficult when you could do them simpler. So graph paper is really simple. Don't think super hard about where your tick mark should go when you have the lines there for you. Now, Cole, how would I do the science one? My pen doesn't work, so no.
Can I point to it up there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming.
Well, we'll do one at a time. We'll let Cole do one, and then I'll let each of you all. So now remember, Cole, and actually I used his example all day yesterday when he said that when you're graphing, you go in the entrance and then you walk to the elevator and you go up or down. So remember that. You always do the X first and then you go up or down. See, now he has like a big head because he knows, oh, she used my example all day. But it is true. I did use your example all day.
Okay, so for science, we're gonna go. So it's 5 to the left.
Oh, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's right there. Okay. Then you're gonna go 3 up. So you got 1, 2, 3, and then right there. Yep, right there.
And then you got to put your S there.
Yeah, S
So
for
you
science.
don't have to draw this line like I did. I just drew it so that you also would see the path. Taylor, come up here and do the education building. Oh, you can explain it at your seat if you want, or you can like. And then you stay there because the y is at 0. And don't forget to label it, guys. On your test, you are going to have to label your points. So if you don't label your points, I don't know where your points are supposed to be. Why don't we stay in our seat and Thomas explain where the art is?
So have to move 2 to the left.
2 to the left?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then move 5 down. And then put A.
Okay, remember, you got to walk to the elevator before you can ride it up or down. Okay, where does the dining go? That one can be a little tricky if you don't pay attention. Where does the dining one go? Jacob?
So what you do, you go 0 to the left.
Yeah, so you stay at the entrance, you don't go anywhere. And then what?
And then probably the hardest part ever, you go 1 down.
You just go straight down.
It's so hard.
So you just go straight down. And what letter goes there for the label?
D.
D. And then finally, my last point. There's more people. Casey, where's the last one?
So it's probably
6 to the right.
and then 5 up.
And then 5 up. And what letter goes here? M for music. Okay, how did y'all do graphing? So, on your homework, I wouldn't think they would make you have to make graphs, but if you have to make the graphs, you have graph paper now. But I can say on your test, you're not going to have to create your own graphs. So I'll have the graph for you with all the numbers and everything, but you'll just have to actually put the points on there. You can keep this paper. That way you can stick it in your book, use it if you need it. Here you go. For what? Use yours for what? I don't need it. You're fine. It is really good. A lot of y'all's are really good. So, let's look. You have one. So some people, or I guess there's 2 different strategies. Some people, they just describe the location. So they did 5, pretty much what you all were telling me to do. They just put it into words instead of making a graph. And then the most common strategy, I think, is that they actually graphed it. And that was something that, since they had already done it, once you graphed yours, you can just look here and be like, yep, looks like it, cool.
I did mine on the opposite side instead. Like I put my numbers instead.
What do you mean?
Like D, I put my D on the other side.
Oh, that doesn't matter.
My M, I put my M on the other side. My
What do you
S,
mean?
I put my S there. My A, and then I put my A.
So did you go so your D,
Was there, and then I put my dot there, but I put the D on the other side.
okay, was your dot here?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I care about. I don't care if you write the letter above, below, beside, whatever. I just want to make sure the dot's where it's supposed to be. Yes, Cole?
What, do we have, outside time?
No.
Not
Yeah. That's science.
okay, but hey, this is math, so let's stay with math. So look at the connected. Y'all are the ones who asked me to watch the video today, and this extra talking is gonna make us not be able to. Just saying. So look at the connected questions. So now we should be able to do these 5 questions because we just graphed it. So I'm going to give y'all maybe a minute or so, since they're like, you actually have to write a sentence for each. Go ahead and answer these questions, and then we'll go over them as a class. Okay, why is the origin important when graphing points on the coordinate plane, Taylor? Exactly, origin's where you start at. I don't know if it was this class or my other classes, but I always say that the origin kind of looks like the word original. So something that's the original of something is always the starting one for it. Like the jersey that I had on yesterday, it was the original type of football jersey before they had the polyester jerseys that they wear today. Or like anything, you have the original. Usually when you have the original, whether it be the desk, these student desks that you all are sitting in, they didn't always look like that. I have at my parents' house the desk that my grandparents used to teach to teach their kids. The y'all would hate it, but what it is that your desk your desk wasn't attached to your seat. You had your seat, and then the person behind you desk was attached to the back of your seat. And so you had it was like Caden would have a chair in front of her, and then her desk would be attached to that chair. Caitlin's desk would be attached to Caden's chair, and then she would have her seat. So a lot of things that we use today, like this, was not the original. My original cell phone was a flip phone. So, hey class, I've told y'all I can't do stuff like this if we like take it and run with it. So the origin It kind of sounds like the original, but that's always where you start at. Look at the ordered pairs and model it. What does the first coordinate tell you? So we're looking in the model it. The first coordinate, they said 5 units left and 3 units up. What does that tell you, Jacob?
The first one tells you to move right or left. The second one tells you to move up or down.
Good. Yeah. So if you knew, like in your head, if you could envision a graph in your head and you had a coordinate that was like a -3, 7, could you tell me what quadrant it would end up in?
Yes,
What quadrant?
it would be quadrant 2.
It would be because if you can, and some of you may not be able to do that yet, but if you have this and you have the point like -3, 7, before you even graph it, I know, well, negative means I'm going to go to the left, and then positive means I'm going to go up. So it's going to be somewhere in quadrant 2. So when you do graph your point, you can check it and be like, awesome, I ended up in that quadrant, or how in the world did I end up in quadrant 4? Like, so you can kind of check it that way.
How would you be able to do that?
You would end up in quadrant 4 if you went the wrong way. If you went down 3 and 4, 7. So if you got your numbers mixed up. But
Aren't you supposed to start with the X?
number 4, Alan's room is located at 3, -3. Use your words just like you all were doing before. How would you describe the location for where her room would be, Cole?
It would be, you'd say 3 to the right and 3 down, and be in quadrant 4.
Exactly. What does it mean when the x coordinate and the y coordinate, what does it mean when the x coordinate or the y coordinate is 0? Zayden?
It means that it starts at the origin.
Well, what if,
It's at the origin.
well, they all start at the origin no matter what. But look at like D. For dining, the x coordinate was at 0, and then you had -1.
Oh, so then you just go to 0 and then go down or up.
So, yeah. So, well, what about the education one? It was at -6 and then 0.
Well, then you would go to -6 and then stay there.
So, what does it mean if one of your coordinates is at 0, Casey? Yeah, so if you have, and Zane, you were saying it right. I just wanted those like specific, like simple, kind of simplify it kind of thing. So what it means is if you look at a coordinate and one of those coordinates is a 0, it's going to be on a line somewhere. Now, one thing to look at, if the y is a 0, it's going to be on the x line or x-axis. If the x is a 0, it's going to be on the y-axis. So it's always the opposite of wherever the 0 is.
I don't get it.
Well, so look at the education building. The education building, your x is -6, your y is 0. But if we look where we graphed it, it ended up on the x-axis. So it's the opposite.
Oh, so we will go that way.
Yeah.
And then we'll just stay there.
Yeah. So the same thing with the dining one. The dining was at 0, and then for the x, and then the y was -1. So the x was the 0, but the y is where the point was. If you don't like thinking of it the opposite, think of whichever. If you have a 0, then the actual number is going to be the axis it's on. So for education, your number is the x, your non-zero. So education is -6 is for x, 0 is for y. So it's going to end up on the x-axis because that's where we have our larger number at. Okay. This is not science class. So, does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
So you can either whichever makes sense to your head, or you can just forget it and just solve it and know that one of them's going to end up on a line somewhere.
Yeah.
But if you want to know specifically what line, if you're going by the 0, it's going to be the opposite line. If you're going by the larger or the digit, then the non-zero, then it's going to be that line. Yes, Aiden.
So you're gonna You're always going to start on the X.
You're always going to start at the
So
origin.
if it's 0 for the X, it's going to be straight in the center.
It's going to be on the
Y.
Y.
Up or down because you have to. So you can't go side to side. You can only go side to side once.
You don't go side to side at all if your X coordinate is a 0. You just stay there.
And it's the opposite for the opposite.
Yep. So, how do you, this is back to our explaining, how do you graph a point on the coordinate plane? I think people are absent. Who's absent today? Let me look at my thing.
Y'all. I don't know where Landon is. Yeah, where did Landon go?
Landon's in ISS today.
I don't want to go to
Aubrey's
ISS.
absent. Landon's absent. I think everyone else is here today. So, but when Landon comes back or when Aubrey comes back, how are you going to tell them to graph a point on a graph? Taylor?
Can I borrow some headphones, please?
Yeah, so you start at the origin and you're either going to move left or right first and then you move up or down, depending on what the sign is. Good job. Can someone else explain it a different way? Maybe, because you never know. A lot of the reasons I let you all explain it, because the way I explain it may not make any sense, but if someone else explains it, it does. Charlia, how would you explain it?
You start at 0, and if it's a negative number, you'll go to the left, and if it's a positive number, you go to the right. And like you move how many numbers there are until you find like the two numbers and you put them together and you find the point.
Good job. So I have not updated your all's chart or your agenda today, but you do have homework. Y'all aren't that lucky. So today is Tuesday, and actually I'm going to update it while I'm thinking about it. So your homework for today is just the 2 pages behind the one you should have done yesterday, which is 141 and 142. So, do what?
Bewley, don't do the try it problem.
Yeah, this is a paper diamond online now. I'm not even trying to.
It's Bewley, so we need you to try it.
Hey, no one should have put up your books. I didn't tell you to put up your books. I just told you what your homework was going to be. That's great. Get it back out. So, Thomas was right. I forgot about this last section. So, on this bottom section down here, you have the try it. It says for you to graph and label the locations. So, for the home, so you should have 4 different ones. Pay attention because the 0, the home has a 0 on the X. So if the X has a 0, what line is it going to be on?
The X. The Y.
It's going to be on the opposite, which is the Y. So your home's going to be somewhere over here on the Y axis. And then you have your school, library, and park. So go ahead. Don't forget to do that if you haven't already, and then you can get started on your homework. So in a minute or so, I'll graph these 4, but go ahead and get started on your homework.
Can we do this time?
Huh?
Can we watch the video?